the tariffs that U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed on Canada.
Global trade war tonight after President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on imports from Canada.
As you are aware, China has imposed tariffs of up to 60% on certain products, while Canada and Mexico have faced 25% tariffs, accelerating the global agenda. Next in line for Donald Trump was Europe.
It will definitely happen with the European Union.
The U.S. president stated that the Europe tariffs would be announced very soon, and that the United Kingdom would need to work on this issue for some time. These shocking remarks caused great concern among Europe member states, as the Europe Group assessed the situation in light of Trump's tax announcements. This was the second time that Trump directed his tariff decisions towards the Europe. Emmanuel Macron, president of France, made a crucial rebuttal. In order to stay up to date with our content, please remember to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications. We will now go over the specifics of these significant messages from Macron, as well as how other EU member states responded to his remarks on tariffs, which probably even Donald Trump would not have anticipated. Begin, as EU leaders demanded, negotiations in reaction to Donald Trump's harsh tariff threat. French President Emmanuel Macron gave a startling revelation. In the event that EU interests were attacked, the French leader said member states could retaliate against US tariffs. In remarks made on the fringes of the unofficial EU Defense Summit in Brussels, Emmanuel Macron emphasized that Europe, as a surviving power, must make sure it is respected and respond accordingly if the US accelerates trade issues. Macron urged a more robust and coordinated response to pressures from global trade, emphasizing that Europe needs to improve its technological and industrial infrastructure, boost defense spending, and take a strategic economic stance to lessen its reliance on outside powers. He also promoted an action plan that prioritizes European industry and procurement decisions, increases financing from the public and private sectors, and reforms the European Investment Bank's financing mechanisms. Emmanuel Macron said that Europe must cooperate in important areas, and urged EU partners to follow France's lead in increasing defense spending. At a time when worries about trade tensions with the United States were intensifying after President Donald Trump took office, these remarks were perceived as a retaliatory move by Macron. In other words, French President Emmanuel Macron was already preparing to counter US President Donald Trump's discourse that is critical of Europe. According to Marc Ferracci, the French industry minister, trade negotiations with Washington should involve some form of power dynamic. For any response to be successful, it must be tough and concentrate on goods that are significant to the U.S. According to François Villeroy de Galhau, governor of the Bank of France, Trump's current tariffs are draconian. These tariffs are a concerning development that will increase economic uncertainty, François Villeroy de Galhau said. The EU group also had a more thorough discussion of the matter. The foreign policy chief of the bloc, Kaja Kallas, stated that a trade war would not have any winners. According to European Council President Antonio Costa, member states of the EU concurred with Secretary-General Mark Rutte of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that a more robust European defense would also fortify the transatlantic alliance. According to Mark Rutte, there's a lot of money floating around, and more to come as European NATO allies increase their defense spending. In his opinion, the United States stands to gain much more as defense spending increases, and Donald Trump will have a much stronger hand in the tariff competition. The United States sells a lot more defense equipment to Europe than vice versa. European nations also supported French leader Emmanuel Macron's opposition to U.S. tariffs, arguing that the EU should take more action against the U.S. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stated that the EU is powerful enough to respond to any U.S. trade tariffs, but their goal is to open the door for collaboration. I believe that we must take every precaution to avoid this utterly pointless and foolish tariff. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who feels that Europe and the U.S. are interdependent, emphasizes that a trade war is a mistake, and that all efforts should be made to keep allies from fighting against China's expansionism or the Russian threat. The leaders called for more talks with Washington amid rising tensions over tariff competition and the failure to fully resolve the issues. In our view, protectionism more generally will harm citizens no matter where they live, and Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin stated that the EU and the United States should work together constructively on trade because protectionism hurts citizens wherever they live. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen stated that Copenhagen would never support a war with allies in general, but that if the Trump administration imposes tough tariffs on Europe, it will face a collective and forceful response. Petteri Orpo, the Prime Minister of Finland, stated that Europe ought to engage in trade talks with Trump. Petteri Orpo went on to say that Russia is currently Europe's greatest threat, and that having a banking union alone is insufficient. We also need a defense union. According to Luxembourg Prime Minister Luc Frieden, trade tariffs are always bad, and the solution is to respond with similar measures. The economy of Spain. The EU is open to trade and supports a globalized market, according to Minister Carlos Cuerpo. However, he contended that the parties should not be naive and will defend their businesses to guarantee that they can compete on an even playing field. While most EU leaders agreed with French President Emmanuel Macron's remarks, Their main stance was that dialogue should be used to resolve the tariff issue. Emmanuel Macron, on the other hand, has been the most vocal EU leader in recent days, regarding Donald Trump's plans to impose tariffs on the EU. Given Macron's remarks, how will the future of the two nations be affected if Trump chooses to impose additional tariffs rather than come to an agreement with France? Contrary to expectations, relations between the US and France have recently deteriorated significantly before Trump announced his plans to impose tariffs on the EU. This is because Trump signed a number of executive orders on the first day of his second term that withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Accord and the World Health Organization. Political ties between France and the United States improved in 2007, following the election of Nicolas Sarkozy as President of France, known as the American Sarkozy, said at the time that he was proud of his moniker after the United States, and France's relations continued to deteriorate on July 12, 2017. In April 2018, President Donald Trump of the United States traveled to France at President Emmanuel Macron's invitation after Macron spoke to the U.S. Congress and stated that he wanted the U.S. to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement in order to combat climate change. In late 2018, U.S. Congressman Thomas Massie made the alarmist claim that Macron was a socialist, militarist, globalist scientist. Trump made fun of Macron over tariffs and nationalism. Following Trump's December Armistice Day visit to Paris, which drew harsh criticism from both France and the U.S. for his decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria in April 2019, France's World War II defeat plans for a European army and the French leader's approval ratings. In November 2019, Gérard Araud, France's departing ambassador to the U.S., characterized the Trump administration and the U.S. as isolated, and Macron questioned the U.S.'s commitment to Europe today. Although relations between the U.S. and France have been rocky thus far, Donald Trump's most recent decision to impose tariffs on the EU has further strained those ties. Trump's decision to impose tariffs may have negative effects on both the U.S. and France. To fully comprehend these effects, it is important to take into account the two nations' economic relationships before Trump made his decision. French-American trade increased dramatically after the COVID-19 pandemic, reaching record highs in 2021, and the two countries enjoyed a strong, mutually beneficial economic relationship. Bilateral trade levels remained higher than before the pandemic, despite the fact that there were no significant issues between the United States and France. Economic fluctuations between the two countries caused trade to decline in 2023, falling 12.4 billion EUR from 2022 to 97 billion EUR in 2023, primarily due to falling energy prices and decreased French beverage exports and cruise ship activity. According to French customs data, imports and exports decreased across all major product categories, but trade and services increased by about 2% in 2023 to reach 70.4 billion EUR, while France's trade surplus was 15.9 billion EUR. France's exports of goods and services increased 1.7% to 43.2 billion EUR and 2.7% to 27.3 billion EUR, respectively, both of which were down one spot from the previous year. In 2023, the U.S. was France's fifth largest supplier and fourth largest consumer. The bilateral trade balance fell slightly to a deficit of 13.3 billion in 2022 after 4 years of surpluses, and it was negative again in 2023, coming in at 6.6 billion EUR. French exports to the U.S. were driven by the aviation sector in 2022, with pharmaceuticals and beverages. 3. Compared to 2022, all three commodity categories saw a decline, with beverage exports falling by 1 billion euros, or 20.6%, breaking previous records. Additionally, cruise ships and ships, pharmaceuticals driven by rising wind turbine exports, general-purpose machinery and tools, and cosmetics and perfumes were among the sectors with the largest decline in exports. Although economic ties between the United States and France have been growing and then contracting as observers have noted, economic dynamics have been maintained free from conflict between the two countries. However, given Donald Trump's actions, more economic issues between France and the United States are expected today, which may force France to look for other economic alliances with nations that it might choose over the United States with high-level discussions, cooperation agreements, and mutual commitments on world events. The relationship between France and China has undergone significant change in recent years. In April 2023, French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Beijing marked a major shift in Sino-French relations. New agreements were signed during the visit, indicating a closer relationship. In particular, both countries urged the international community to address the spillover effects in multiple areas and pledged to help resolve the Ukrainian crisis through dialogue. Following this conference, a more detailed survey revealed Chinese President Xi Jinping's recognition of the positive impact of their economic ties by signing 18 cooperation agreements on behalf of French and Chinese companies. When he visited Europe for the first time in 5 years, officials displayed new hope and emphasized the benefits of communication. She met Macron in Haute-Pyrénées, France, in May 2024, a year later. While MCR emphasized the need to maintain Europe's strategic independence while forging closer ties with China, she also highlighted China's commitment to national unity and cross-cultural contacts with France, reflecting cooperative efforts to improve collaboration and stabilize world affairs. Their discussions covered a wide range of global issues, thus reinforcing mutual pledges to improve ties not only between China and France, but also with the European Union. These recent occurrences demonstrate the growing significance of Sino-French relations on the international stage. In fact, the two countries' early histories showed somewhat more varied interactions beginning in the 17th century. France and China have a complex and rich past. Following France's recognition of Taiwan, diplomatic ties between the two countries soured in the middle of the 20th century, and France was suspended from trading with China in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Since 1964, when France re-established diplomatic relations with China, the two countries have frequently engaged in high-level negotiations. Various agreements have been made, and their relationships have grown stronger. However, political systems and beliefs have posed challenges for the alliance, and the issues separating France and China have become less apparent in recent years. One notable development in the two countries' relationship was the establishment of the Franco-Chinese Strategic Alliance in 2004, which aims to promote cooperation in areas like trade, business culture, and education. This cooperation improved relations between the two countries and paved the way for more general collaboration in many areas. In 2015, both countries reaffirmed their commitment to addressing global warming and promoting sustainable development. This joint announcement significantly aided the climate change negotiations that resulted in the Paris Agreement later that year. Since taking office in 2017, French President Emmanuel Macron has made strengthening France-China economic and cultural ties his top priority because France's economic growth and global influence rely on its relationship with China. Ma has emphasized its importance. During his first official visit to China in January 2018, Macron negotiated a number of agreements with Chinese officials on nuclear energy, agriculture, and tourism. He also urged China to take specific action to address trade imbalances and market access issues. Despite a number of challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic and France's initial resistance to China's Belt and Road Initiative, the French president also favored increased European-Chinese cooperation, and the two countries' economic ties continue to grow. France's top foreign investment is now China. Source: in 2019, the two countries negotiated agreements encompassing a wide range of topics, such as civil aviation, intellectual property rights, and green finance. The data also showed that France and China had improved relations in 2021, with trade volumes between the two countries reaching previously unheard-of heights. According to China's MOFCOM, bilateral trade has increased by approximately 800 times in the 60 years since the two countries' formal diplomatic relations were established, generating $78.9 billion in 2023. China is now France's biggest trading partner outside of the EU, but France continues to play a vital role in international trade. China's ally within the European Union, from 1.1 billion EUR in 2022 to 2.92 billion EUR in 2023. France's bilateral sectoral deficit with China increased significantly, indicating that it imported more goods and services from China than it exported to France. The increase in the trade disparity suggested a growing dependency on French markets for Chinese products. On the other hand, the United Nations Comtrade International Trade Database predicts that China's total imports from France will be suggesting a potential shift in the two countries' commercial ties. In 2023, China's top exports to France were electronic and electrical equipment, energy-related components of machinery, boilers, signs for furniture lighting, prefabricated structures, unknown-type goods, and automobiles other than trams. In conclusion, given Donald Trump's mounting pressure on the European Union over tariffs, it is clear from all of this that France has a different partner in China regarding U.S. tariffs. Experts believe that the EU-US tariff crisis should be resolved primarily through dialogue rather than retaliation, because of Emmanuel Macron's recent forceful and concerned remarks, which increase the likelihood that France will increase its exports and imports with China. It is unclear which scenario will be realized in this tariff crisis between the US and the EU. Thank you for watching. Today, we're diving into a shocking move that has caught everyone off guard. France, a long-standing ally of the United States, has made a bold decision that even the EU finds surprising. Stay tuned as we uncover the details of this unprecedented action and its implications. Just when you thought international relations couldn't get more unpredictable, French President Emmanuel Macron stunned the world with a move that has left many scratching their heads. In a decisive maneuver against American interests, France has implemented a series of policies aimed at asserting its economic independence and challenging the dominance of U.S. influence in global affairs. Former President Donald Trump, known for his robust foreign policy, expressed disbelief at the audacity of Macron's actions, calling it unexpected and unprecedented. The ripple effects of this decision are already being felt across diplomatic circles, prompting heated debates on both sides of the Atlantic. To understand the gravity of France's move, we turn to expert analysis. Political analysts suggest that Macron's stance reflects growing discontent within the EU over perceived American hegemony. By asserting its own economic policies and bolstering European unity, France aims to carve out a stronger, more independent role on the world stage. Meanwhile, European citizens have expressed mixed reactions to the news. While some applaud Macron for taking a stand against what they perceive as American overreach, others worry about the potential repercussions on transatlantic relations and global stability. Historically, the relationship between the EU and the US has been characterized by cooperation and shared interests. However, recent geopolitical shifts and diverging policy priorities have strained this alliance. Macron's bold move underscores a broader trend towards redefining global partnerships in an increasingly multipolar world. As we navigate these turbulent waters of international diplomacy, one thing remains clear. France's unexpected maneuver has set a precedent for future EU-US relations. What do you think about Macron's bold move? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on global affairs. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay informed and stay curious. France's unexpected decision to challenge US influence has sent shockwaves through international politics. While it may seem like just another diplomatic disagreement on the surface, the reality is far more complex and potentially dangerous. Let's break down the key impacts and risks of this bold move. One of the biggest risks here is the deterioration of US-France relations, which could extend to a broader rift between the US and the EU. Historically, France has been a crucial partner in NATO, trade, and global security initiatives. If this tension escalates, the US may retaliate with economic measures, including trade restrictions, sanctions, or reduced cooperation on defense. The EU could be forced to pick sides, leading to fractures within the bloc itself. NATO's unity may weaken, giving adversaries like Russia and China more room to expand their influence. France's move is not just symbolic, it has real economic implications. If France pushes forward with policies that distance itself from US economic influence, American businesses operating in France and the EU could face new regulations or restrictions. The EU might accelerate efforts to reduce reliance on the US dollar in global trade, threatening America's economic dominance. France could strengthen ties with emerging economies like China, Russia, or BRICS nations, further undermining US trade leverage. This could trigger market volatility, impacting global stock markets, the strength of the euro and dollar, and inflation rates. France is a key military power in Europe, and any diplomatic strain with the US could impact NATO coordination, especially in light of ongoing tensions with Russia. Intelligence sharing, weakening counterterrorism, and cybersecurity efforts. Joint military operations, making Western countries more vulnerable to external threats. If France distances itself from the US in security matters, it could embolden adversaries looking to exploit these divisions. France's defiance could inspire other European nations to take a tougher stance against US policies. If more EU countries start prioritizing regional interests over transatlantic ties, we could see a major realignment of global alliances, shifting power away from the US. The EU becoming more independent in energy, defense, and tech policies. Increased European cooperation with China, Russia, and the global South, further reducing US influence. This would be a strategic nightmare for Washington, as it risks losing its strongest allies. While this may not spark an immediate conflict, the long-term consequences could be severe. France's move could set off a chain reaction that leads to a new Cold War-style rivalry, where the US and EU drift apart in major policy areas. Global economic instability, with trade wars, currency shifts, and inflation spikes. Weakened Western alliances, leaving countries like Russia and China with greater influence over global affairs. If this situation escalates without diplomatic resolution, it could reshape the world order in ways we haven't seen since the end of World War II. France has made its stance clear, And now the world is watching how the US and EU respond. Will Washington retaliate? Will the EU back France or try to mediate? The next moves will determine whether this is just a temporary diplomatic crisis or the beginning of a major geopolitical shift. What do you think? Is France making the right move, or is this a dangerous gamble? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on global affairs. The economic relationship between France and the United States is both substantial and multifaceted, encompassing significant trade in goods and services, as well as robust foreign direct investment, FDI flows. Trade in goods and services total trade volume. In 2022, the combined value of goods and services traded between France and the United States reached approximately $153.8 billion, marking a 32% increase from 2021 and setting a new record high. Goods trade. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, trade in goods accounted for $104.6 billion of the total trade in 2022, reflecting a 30% increase compared to 2021. The exchange of services between the two nations amounted to close to $48 billion in 2022, representing a 35% increase over the previous year. U.S. investment in France. In 2021, U.S. businesses' total investment position in France was valued at 106 billion. French investment in the U.S. French businesses' total investment position in the United States reached $326 billion in 2021. Employment impact. The strong economic ties between France and the United States have led to significant job creation. In the United States, approximately 740,000 jobs have been generated by 5,000 French companies operating across the country. In France, around 480,000 jobs have been created by 4,600 U.S. companies established in France. These figures underscore the depth and mutual benefits of the economic partnership between France and the United States, highlighting the critical role of trade and investment in bolstering both economies. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I see you all in the next one.